taking bets on the name of the new royal kid. That's how you show your respect. Place your bets. Bet, nah. I think Chuggy would be a good idea. Think about it, your royal fabulousnesses. Chuggy is what I'm putting my money on. Or, Juicy Loopy, or whatever that guy said if it's a girl. Think about it. Now, Brexit. Not quite what we were promised. Disruption to trade, seen in the first weeks of Brexit, cannot be dismissed simply as teething problems, but represents the first signs of structural issues, which is going to cut UK GDP for years to come. So say experts. I'm joined now by David Hennig, who is the director of the UK Trade Policy Project at the European Centre for International Political Economy think tank. He previously helped to set up the Department for International Trade. So, David, is it right to say that these aren't just teething problems with Brexit? These are actually all baked into the system?
This is baked into the system. We are now starting the process of an adjustment to new trading terms with the EU. We're not going back to the way things were, where we could just take anything, anytime over to the EU or import it, whether it was one item or 100. We're changing. We're already seeing that it's tough adjustment, but I think there's a lot more adjustment to come.
Is the government doing enough to help companies? Because they're saying that they're swamped. This bonfire of red tape that they were promised has turned into a mountain of it instead.
There's a lot of new red tape, certainly. I think that there's a fundamental problem here with these new trading terms with the EU, is that the government doesn't really want to admit that there's a whole load of new barriers, and that's what they've signed up for. So they're kind of saying, "Oh no, it's only teething trouble," or "It's not serious." Whereas actually, it's the new reality. So there's a gap between what government is saying and the reality as experienced by business, and we really need government to kind of admit the difficulties that businesses are going through, admit they're here to stay, and do everything they can now to make sure the right facilities are in place, while also managing this adjustment process. It's going to be very tough for those who are exporters of small amounts or importers of small amounts, as we're seeing from repeated news stories.
Do you think the government knew that it was going to be like this all along? The chief Brexiteers had a clear notion that this is what we were being let in for, or is this coming as a complete surprise?
I think some of the ministers thought there would probably be some extra checks, but it's been a long time since we've really had serious borders with Europe. They mostly, all the checks stopped in 1992. And I think that ministers, businesses just got used to it and assumed that was the way it normally was. So I think there is an element where they just weren't prepared. They were listen to the people who told them it'll all be all right, with various excuses. Those who were who were pushing Brexit, they weren't wanting to listen to those who said there would be problems. That was politically inconvenient. So I think that it probably has come as a bit of a surprise. And they're probably still in a little bit of denial that they don't really want to admit they've put up lots of new barriers to trade, because this is the Conservative Party that thinks that they believe in trade. So it's a little bit inconvenient for them that actually we've never seen so many barriers to trade put up by a government.
This is quite an unbelievable position, because we were told over and over and over again by people that were persuaded to vote Brexit that they knew what they were voting for. I mean, I still get calls all the time where I knew what I was voting for, but it turns out that the architects of Brexit didn't know what they were asking people to vote for.
Well, look, individuals can have decided, look, I've spoken to people who say, I don't care what the costs are. I want it out. And on that basis, they knew what they were voting for. I think it's a bit harder for the government to say that they knew exactly what everybody was voting for and provided all the information, when it seems to be coming as a surprise to them what the situation has been now. And I think that there's an element here as well about the choices the government has made in the last year. So you could have had many different types of Brexit. We didn't have to have all of these checks. We didn't have to have so regulatory autonomy, as it's being called, put first ahead of trade. That was a choice. So we could leave the EU in different ways. We chose a particularly hard way to leave the EU. That will have an impact on trade.
You know, you said that people make the assertion, I don't care about the financial consequences, I just want out. Surely that is predicated on the belief that was sold to them that being out would be better for them. So that idea that, I don't care about what happens, I just want out, that's because they thought that it was going to be better out.
I don't think that applies to everybody. Certainly it does to some. I'm not denying that some people thought that there would be no costs to leaving whatsoever. Would have believed we'd still have full rights in the single market, because a number of those who were pushing leaving the EU said that we would. Others, though, were less worried about that. So I don't tend to ascribe any single view to those who voted Leave or Remain. Actually, come to think of it. It was the choices of the government in the last year that have given us all of these barriers, more than it was people who voted Leave or Remain in 2016.
Now, was it the choice of the government, or was it the choice of this sort of hard nut element from the ERG, who were trying to pull the government to do the kind of Brexit that they particularly wanted for whatever reason?
There's certainly an element in which the hardliners within the Conservative Party were pushing a harder Brexit, and they were among the people who were saying, look, it won't be too much of a problem. If we leave, there won't really be all these barriers. I've got plenty of articles from their selected experts who said, no, there won't really be these checks, which look a little bit silly now. But ultimately, it's the government who chooses what policies they follow. It's the government who handled the negotiation. Even in that negotiation, even a couple of months ago, they could still have come to an agreement with the EU that reduced the checks that we're seeing, that reduced the problems that we're seeing now. The government chose not to do that. So although they were clearly being pushed by hardliners in the party, this was all about the government's choice to put in these new barriers to trade. There's no one else that they can really blame, although they do try to blame the EU.
Well, yes, they do. Arch Brexiters think that the problems are being caused by the European Union being mean to us. What's the truth in that?
The European Union is well known the world over for being quite mean to those who try to import there. In fact, so are most countries and blocs. Actually, the US is pretty mean to those who try to import there as well, and many others, because everybody has their regulations, everybody has their demands, they have their inspections. They're not being specifically particularly mean to us. This is the way that international trade works outside of the EU. Yes, it could look. You can spin it as looking like punishment, and that's what we see. But no, I have many people. I used to deal with a lot of US trade officials a few years ago, and they would complain about the EU being mean to them. So if the US are complaining that the EU is mean, it's not just us.
What about America and other countries? We are told there's been a trade deal with India, which is not entirely true. We're told that we've had a fantastic deal with Japan, which is not entirely true. America seems to be less interested in doing a deal with us than the EU for obvious reasons. So what about all these trade deals that we were promised?
There will be trade deals. They'll probably be with Australia and New Zealand. May well happen this year. But what I think is worth stressing is these trade deals will in no way replicate what we had with the EU in trade terms with other countries. They're obviously a lot further away, but they won't make it the kind of fully free trade that we had with the EU, where you could simply send anything without inspection. From here on in, all exports from the UK to other countries go through the same sort of inspections they go through with the EU, or whether they're going to Australia, the EU, or the US, and all of our imports are going to go through processes as well. So, yes, we will do trade deals, but they will be nothing like membership of the EU or membership of the single market, where so many barriers were reduced.
Now, we're looking at the worst recession in 300 years. It's something like GDP is down about 9%. I think that's about right, isn't it? Do you
9.9.
9.9. Do you recognise this figure of 3%, which is what the expected hit to the UK economy is going to be in the course of the next few years, on top of the 9.9 that we've already got?
Well, just be careful with disentangling these figures. The 9.9% hit from COVID, that's the fall in our GDP in 2020. Much of that will soon be recovered because this is delayed spending and we'll have fast growth this year. Now, the 3% or so perhaps that's a hit from these extra trade barriers as a result of Brexit, that's roughly the average of what economists have forecast, and we see the reasons for that because we see the barriers, we see the reduced exports, even there will be reduced imports as well. That seems a reasonable figure, and be aware that's a huge figure in trade terms. Most new trade deals might have a positive impact of perhaps 0.1%. So you're talking about the impact from leaving the EU is it's going to be 30 times greater than the impact of a new trade deal with the US. It may well also be, some economists believe that we've already lost probably 2% of our GDP from 2016 since the vote. So the cumulative impact may end up as being 5% of GDP. These are really big numbers in economic terms. We're going to have to work hard to make up for them.
Yes, it'll almost be like going back to the 1970s, won't it? It's like we will become the sick man of Europe again.
Well, I mean, the future is ours to write. I'm not saying that we're going to become the sick man of Europe, but certainly we've given ourselves quite a big hurdle to overcome for future growth and to keep up with others. We can do it. Trade isn't everything. Trade barriers aren't everything. We can do a lot more, but certainly we've given ourselves a tough road ahead in terms of trade.
And just finally, what are your thoughts about this notion of a tunnel from Scotland to Northern Ireland to get around a barrier in the Irish Sea? Won't the barrier just be in the tunnel?
Well, the barrier will be either side. I think if there is talk of the Scots of Northern Ireland leaving the UK, rejoining the EU. They'd probably be quite happy with that tunnel. But I think this is just another wild infrastructure project along the lines of Boris Johnson's formerly greatest hits, like the Estuary Airport and the Garden Bridge. So I'm not taking it completely seriously.
Okay. Thanks, David. That's David Hennig, who is Director of UK Trade Policy Project at the European Centre for International Political Economy think tank. After the Brexit referendum, he helped to set up the Department for International Trade. So what are your thoughts about Brexit so far? Is it everything you hoped it would be? Or is it more likely that you've been sold a pup? Taken for a mug? None of the things that they promised have happened. I suppose the other way of thinking about it is that it's just far too soon to tell. 0345 6060 973, text 84850, email nicka@lbc.co.uk, and if you're on Twitter, it's at LBC. Friday, Saturday, Sunday night at 10, Nick Abbot, LBC. So the disruption to trade seen in the first weeks of Brexit cannot be dismissed simply as teething problems. That's what the Prime Minister said. Don't worry about a thing. It's just teething problems, he said. It does, in fact, according to senior economists, represent the first signs of structural issues which will cut UK GDP for years to come. Senior economists have said this. Steve, on the other hand, tweets that these warnings are all absolute Ramona nonsense. Right. Joe in London says, Ramonas, get over it. You lost. We're out of the mafia-like EU. Senior economists, on the other hand, say that the teething problems, so-called, represent the first signs of structural issues which will cut UK GDP for years to come. But that is just Ramona nonsense, according to Steve. Steve and Joe, at what point will you survey the smoking ruins of our economy and admit that you've been had? Is there no point that you can envisage doing that? I know that it will be difficult because you've made a decision, you've nailed your colours to that mast, and to be admitting that you've been had is embarrassing, apart from anything else. But as the evidence piles up, it becomes more and more difficult, surely, to stick to your guns on this. Doesn't it? This texter says, it's amazing how patriots are willing to destroy the country in order to keep foreigners out. Make Britain great again. Let's have Hillsborough. Lorcan.
Nick, how are you?
Good, thanks.
Good. I just the impact of Brexit, over here. I can just tell you from my own perspective what's happened. I run a restaurant business over here, and I also have some restaurants down in the Republic of Ireland. And normally I would bring over two orders a week out of Manchester before Brexit. And long before that, we had to stop and source everything in the Republic of Ireland rather than the UK because of the delays at the port.
Right, what kind of things are you talking about getting from Manchester?
Well, fresh produce, lettuce, tomatoes, etc.
Right.
Corn, rice, coleslaw.
Mm-hmm.
It was probably worth about 15 million a year to the UK economy, and now we're trying to source it in the Republic of Ireland. We've actually had to pull some products until we can source it in the Republic of Ireland.
When you say 15 million a year, that's what you're spending, or the restaurant trade in general?
That's what the restaurant's spending on food that we would have ordered.
Okay. And so you're saying that because you run restaurants in Republic of Ireland...
Yeah, it's too expensive.
Right.
We had to delist ice creams because of animal produce, because you had to have a vet at the border, and it's just too expensive. So you are now doing... Sorry to interrupt. You're now doing your trade that you used to spend in Britain with the European Union. Is that what you're saying? Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Do you have any experience of the fish trade?
No, thankfully not. No, we're not in the fish trade.
Right. Are you able to open a restaurant there at the moment?
Just for takeaway and delivery.
Right. And how is trade?
It's actually okay. Yeah? We can keep going.
Right.
It's not too bad. Difficult with all the changes, but now we've been kind of at the same stance for a long time, so that's okay. But last year was difficult.
Yeah. And the changes that you're describing, is it because there's more forms to fill in, because it's more expensive, because there's less product available? What?
No, the cost hasn't hit yet, to be quite honest. The cost of Brexit and the extra cost from the logistics company hasn't hit yet. That will. But the change is just in tiers, etc. Because we're a nationwide business, the different jurisdictions played a part as well. But you had to follow what was going on just between yourselves. Right. There was one occasion where we got very, very short notice of closing down, and that wasn't ideal. But to be fair, they've done the best they could. But we've been closed for a long time now.
And so, have you been made aware of the changes that will come in, regarding sourcing products from the UK versus the EU?
No. I mean, it's crazy. I spoke to our logistics company on the 23rd of December, the day before the deal, I believe. And, I mean, they're a major logistics company over and back all the time, and they reckon that 90% of their customers had done absolutely nothing in regards to Brexit. And we still didn't know what we were doing at that stage.
Right, that's really alarming. I mean, it's quite incredible, actually, isn't it?
We find out like you find out, you know what I mean, yeah. through the press.
All right. Okay, well, thanks for that, Lorcan. Wish you all the best. Charlotte in London says, we run a clothing business and we're having to move everything into the EU. We've had to make staff redundant and advise all our UK supply chains, such as printers, embroiderers and lots of suppliers, that we won't be using them anymore after 10 years. It's very sad, she says, and seems crazy to be giving all my business to the EU. Our customers are not willing to order from the UK as it'll cost them 40% more. Why would they, when they can just order from any EU country instead? It's very sad, says Charlotte. It seems to me that everything the Ramonas said is coming true. It wasn't Project Fear. It was Project Fact, wasn't it? Ruislip. Hello, Stuart.
Hello, Nick. Really nice to speak to you. Okay, I'm a Brexiteer for my woes. I just want to ask you a question, because you don't seem to understand why Brexiteers actually are happy to play the long game. I know you can't seem to gather that, and that's fair enough. I'd like to ask you a question.
What's the long game?
Well, not worried about
hoping that it will all come right in the end. Is that the long game?
That's a fair point, Nick. Nick, I'd just like to ask you...
No, but tell me, what is the long game? You said it. What is it?
Well, I'll give you... Okay, fine. Does it matter to you what the country's called, England? Does that matter to you? Or is it completely irrelevant to you as an individual? Does it matter to you what the country's called?
Does it matter to me what the country is called?
Does it matter to you? Would it bother you if somebody said, "Oh, let's call it Rainbow Land"? Would it actually bother you the next morning when you got up?
That would be. I would have a problem with Rainbow Land.
All right, what one would you like?
I'm quite comfortable with England or Britain or the UK. Pick one.
But would it bother you if they wanted to change the name just because? Why not? Why is it important to you, the name then?
Is this your explanation of what the long game is?
It's just a question. Does it matter to you that it's called
England? We've been over that, and I've given you my answer.
All right, Nick, that's fair enough, Nick, fair enough. All I'm saying is that...
But what's the long game?
Nick, the long game is a bit like the war, a bit like 1939. A lot of people understood. It really, really mattered to a lot of people that we actually got to a certain point. And so it was 6 years, whatever. You have to shake shoulders and say, do you know what? It's important. So Brexiteers aren't worried right now, Nick, 2-3 weeks, 2 months down the line, that things haven't got better.
Can I just say, was that your explanation of what the long game was? We're still fighting World War II?
No, it was just an example. We're not fighting anything at the moment. The point I'm making, Nick, is most Brexiteers are more than happy to take 1, 2, 3 years to get to what's really important to us.
But what's important?
It's a feeling that we're in control of our own land. I know you see that as a strange thing, Nick.
Being in control, this sort of fantasy that we are somehow in control. In what respect are we more in control now than we were before?
So there we're down to feeling again, and you've got no time for feeling, Nick. You think it's all a joke, feelings. All feelings, not facts.
Feelings? How different do you feel now than in December? Tell me.
I feel much happier because I feel now. Well, I just feel.
You've got to be kidding me.
No, not really, Nick. But I must say, I love your show. I think you're great. But I'm a Brexiteer, a staunch Brexiteer. We will never agree.
But it doesn't seem like you have any idea why you are a Brexiteer, Stuart. I mean, I've given you ample opportunity, and you went down some route. Right. I'm still not clear as to where we were going with the what. Are you comfortable with the name of the country? What was all that about?
I'll give you an example.
I mean, did you think that the European Union were going to change the name of our country?
No, I just don't think it matters to you too much. And I'm trying to make the point that you're not really too bothered about the country as other people see it.
No, Stuart, I've made this point over and over again. And this is actually quite important. We're talking about patriotism. I've got no idea what you were on about with the name of the country. I don't think you even knew where you were going with that. Patriotism is what you're talking about. And I believe that the difference between somebody like me, Stuart, and somebody like you is that I am interested in what's beneficial for the country. You, on the other hand, are interested in what you have been persuaded is better for you. That's the difference between us. 0345 6060. No, but I do appreciate the call, and I'm glad that you like the show. Maybe a little bit less now. 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Email nicka@lbc.co.uk. If you're on Twitter, it's @LBC. Friday, Saturday, Sunday night at 10. Nick Abbott, LBC. It's 11:30. The news headlines with Zora Sullivan. 0345 6060 973. We're talking about Brexit so far. How's it working out for you? This texter says, why do Remainers in the media, I think it's pronounced Ramonas, why do Ramonas in the media waste their time and energy moaning about leaving the EU? It's done. There is no reverse gear, so why not help people come together to focus on making the best of the future? Any benefits to Brexit? How about the number of people who have been vaccinated compared to the EU? I think that's a huge benefit of being out of the club, says that anonymous texter. OK, couple of things. First of all, the number of people vaccinated has zero to do with being in or out of the EU. We could have gone our own way. We could be in exactly this position whether we were in or out of the EU. And second, I really don't think that you want to start comparing this country to any other country, unless maybe it's Peru. We've done worse than any other country in the world when you combine the economic hit and the death numbers. We have twice as many cases as Germany. Double. They've got 100, they have more people than we do. It's about 65 million in this country. It's about 100 million in Germany. And we've still got twice as many dead people as they have. So think twice before you start comparing our performance to other countries, because it's not going to help your argument. I'll pass that on as an assistance. Am I helping? Slough. Hello, Christine.
Hi.
Christine.
I know. What was that guy Stuart going on about? I mean, please educate this country. I mean, I have English parents. I was born abroad. And I had uncles and aunts that died in the war and fought for this country just because we were in the EU and we were doing really well. But having a frog in the well mentality, this country will not grow. We'll get poorer because we won't have outside experiences. We won't have exchanges. Education is about having a global outlook to life and, exchanging and being motivated by different projects, scientific projects, etc., which are going on and doing really well. And that's all come to an end. And in a way, we've been stifled. We will not be able to exchange knowledge or even go into different institutes. Our children can't go abroad, which they could when we were in the EU. We can't buy property abroad. Well, now we have bought property abroad, but we can't now. We have to pay a visa for 9 weeks and then leave the country and go back again. And it's made us a lot poorer.
Yeah,
on the economic side.
Definitely, yeah. We are definitely poorer. We were poorer pretty much the moment that we voted out all those years ago.
But economically poorer, we are
tanked.
Agriculturally poorer, we are poor. Or when will these ignorant Brexiteers understand that their right-wing frog in the well mentality that has brought this country down into poverty? It's actually when it starts hitting them, then they realise. For example, this cladding stuff in the EU was actually bought out in the open a long time ago, but we ignored it till we had a fire. Did you know that? I
did not know that, but I wouldn't be remotely surprised. Thanks, Christine. On that idea, when will people admit their mistake? Joanna texts, perhaps Leave voters are angry and defiant in the same way that people are when they've just crashed into your car. It's their mistake, but the ensuing damage is too crushing to admit. 2 members of my family are starting musical careers, which would have been based on touring the EU, so we're at the sharp end of this, says Joanna. Yeah, we were talking about this on my show either on Friday or Saturday night. And it's really sad, but it's also comical that Roger Daltrey, who I've got a lot of time for as an artist, but as for his political opinions, not so much. And he famously scoffed at the idea that the EU, that the Brexit rather, had anything to do with musicians when he was asked how it might affect, his industry. And of course, we find out that that's exactly among the first people to be inconvenienced by it, to put it mildly. And of course, the fishing community. I mean, that's really ironic, that pretty much the first people who suffered and are about to be put out of business, if they haven't already been, are the very people that Brexiteers supposedly cared about the most. And not a peep out of any of them, by the way, about the fishing industry. Nigel Farage, what's he said about the fishing industry since? Haven't heard a word. Jim texts, regarding that caller Stewart with his long game and those UK suppliers who've lost their contracts now that the companies they supplied are moving to the EU, I'll take a wild stab in the dark and guess that they don't give a monkeys what England is called and that they'd just like their jobs back, please. Struth, really? Stockton-on-Tees. Hello, Brian.
Yeah, good evening, Nick.
Brian.
You've got to accept the result, Remainers. Look,
No, you're getting... Wait a minute. Wait, hang on. Wait a minute. You're getting it wrong. We do accept the result. It's not...
No, you
we're
don't.
not... Yes, absolutely. We're not pretending it hasn't happened. I'm not Donald Trump and denying reality. What we're saying is, look at the mess.
Look, the problem is with you, Nick, and look, I don't know about Remainers in general, but in your position, right, you can't stand a thing about England. You don't call Scotland, you don't call Wales, you don't call Ireland. All you do is put England down.
No, I'm not putting England down. I am putting down A, the people that brought us this disaster, and B, those absolutely, and
right.
those that were gullible enough to believe it.
Look, we're at war. We're in for 48 years. We've been out after transition for 2 months. Not enough time. Give it a chance.
Right. Okay. But see, the people like you were saying on day one, on January the 1st, you were pointing at a lorry saying, "There you are. You see, the Ramonas were lying to us. It was all Project Fear. That lorry there just passed through from this country into France. It was all a lie."
You're missing the big picture, though, Nick. You're missing the big picture.
Yes.
It runs both ways. Everything is a two-way thing between the EU and the UK.
Right.
We'll break them down a bit, shall we? They can't hold a position what they've got with a protocol on Ireland. They've got to, in the end, let it flow smoothly.
Oh my God! Are you still giving us the argument that they need us more than we need them?
No, it's nothing to do with that. We're not about the situation, what will happen in. All is fair in love and war. They're not going to be able to hold down that situation because you've got to have free. They can't have a war in Ireland.
So we are still. They need us more than we need them.
No, they've got to drop that position in the end. I think the way it's looking.
But
right?
How about we do?
We look at the free trade deal they've done with us.
Why do you think that the EU are going to back down?
I'll tell you how awkward they're being. They've done a new deal with China. Now, in trade deals, the EU say, and when we were trying to deal with them, no trade. You can't have trade help on that. For trade, your country.
You can't have trade help. What does that mean?
Yeah, what we'll call it again. You can't have backup by. China's the biggest culprit to backing their own firms. Right? And they've just done a trade deal with them. Human rights to bang on about. Look at the human rights in China.
Well, look at the human rights in Saudi Arabia. We roll out the red carpet when they come calling.
You know about this deal now, what we signed with them, free trade deal, level playing field. They don't have a level playing field, China. It's critical what they're doing. They are trying to punish us. You look at services,
There are some countries, China among them, America also, that you can't demand everything that you want. You have to go with what is best for your country. When we try to do a deal with China, which is probably not going to happen because of Hong Kong and the Uyghurs and various other things that we've upset them about. Then we won't be able to say, right, we want this and this and this, just like we weren't able to do that with the European Union.
You were saying the EU, right, perfect country and all that.
I've never said that.
Well, hang on, we're about trade deals now, right? They won't give us one, yet they'll give China one. It's a joke. Right, we'll go to the services, the banks and what have you, right? They're given.
I'm sorry, Brian, but I've taken your call many, many times, and you insisted over and over again that the European Union would be beaten into giving us any trade deal we wanted. You're still saying it. There is no amount of evidence that will persuade you that you're wrong.
Nick, it's only 2 months into it. Give it a chance. Now, the thing is, their GDP is going to be way down. Even more than ours.
That's
in the long
okay.
run.
So you are still saying that they need us more than we need them. That is such an asinine thing to say, Brian. I can't even get my head around how you can still come out with that stuff.
You don't want to, do you? You're denying things. Germany now are going to have to pay 40 billion euros. France are going to have to pay 29 billion euros to help the poor countries out. They've got no money, Nick. Come on, look. We've got them over a button. You can't see it.
Oh my
in
God,
6 months.
Brian! Honestly, you have to look at the news or just pick up a newspaper. I don't know where you get your information from. Maybe you just decided on things at the beginning of your life and then built a wall over your front door and cut your telephone cord and threw your computer out the window. You've got to take on board some new information, Brian. They need us more than we need them. I told you at the beginning of this conversation that you were saying that, and you said, no, I'm not. And then you started to say it over and over again. I think that maybe the only thing I can think of, the best conclusion I can come to, Brian, is that you are, in fact, an actor and that this is a performance piece. I'm going to sit with that. Yeah. I think that's what I'm going to go with, because the alternative is too awful to contemplate. So I appreciate your performance this evening, Brian. It was a 5-star effort. 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Email nick@lbc.co.uk. And if you're on Twitter, it's @LBC. Friday, Saturday, Sunday night at 10. Nick Abbot, LBC. This text says, I fully agree with Stuart. I think he was the one that was banging on about feelings. He's now we're out of the European Union. He just, every fibre of his being feels revivified, or words to that effect. Anyway, this one says, I fully agree with Stuart. I'm very pleased we are out of the EU. New arrangements will take time to bed in. Some businesses will not be able to adapt. New ones will emerge. Well, it seems a blithe assurance. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. The EU has asset stripped the UK. No, they haven't. Absolute nonsense. If companies in the European Union own businesses in this country, it's because of our short-termism. We've sold them for a short-term profit. Anyway, it says the EU has asset stripped the UK, which it hasn't, has disallowed government investment in the UK economy, etc. Well, that's not true either. To me, it's worth it, even if we're poorer to start with. How about we're poorer permanently? How about that? Christine says children can't study abroad. They still can. Well, not like they used to. How about we're permanently poorer? I mean, the European Commission released the first formal analysis of the impact of Brexit since the transition out on the 1st of January. It predicted a 2.25% hit to the economy by 2022. That's £40 billion in lost growth. But that's the low end. Associate Economics Professor at the London School of Economics has predicted a 36% fall in exports to the UK over the next decade. And King's College London political scientist said he remained confident in a forecast of a 7% hit to GDP over the next decade. Remember, 9.9% hit is the worst, has caused the worst recession in 300 years. On top of that, we're about to put between 2.25 and 7% hit to GDP over the next decade. We really are going to end up as the sick man of Europe again. I mean, it's just embarrassing, apart from anything else. We've done this to ourselves. Uxbridge, hello, Mohammed.
Hi, Nick. Hi. Thanks for taking my call. You know, I'm the first-time caller to the LBC, so thanks for doing that. Yeah.
Good, man.
So the stats you are giving. I think they are going to the deaf ears, because whatever stats you give, the right wing won't want to listen, and the reason is because I'm from Pakistan. It's very important to tell. So I come from a country. I came into this country in 2006, and throughout my late teens and early 20s, I've been hearing from the right wing in our country, which was like the religious who basically took over Islam and stuff, and they've been keep saying to the men like us, oh, you have to have a beard, you have to have your trouser up than your ankles and stuff like this, and to the women they can't go for studies and stuff, and they were extremists, they were right wing. So we were in our heart, we knew that. What's I've been hearing in the last 4 or 5 years, still, this Brexit debate is going on, that all the comments, they are not at the same level, but they are very similar what I've been hearing when I was in Pakistan. And the reason I say that, nobody ever gave me a simple logic that why we wanted to get out from EU. Okay, I understand. Okay, we wanted our own laws, but what was wrong with the EU laws? You know, when people from the West came into my country and they said that, you know, the girls should have education. So when they refused to give girls education in my country, Malala came up, you know. Something bad happened to Malala, and Malala came here, and that girl has done wonder, you know.
Right, okay, well, let's not get bogged down in the politics of another country. Let's spend some minutes talking about this one. And on that subject of laws, I mean, this is one of these vague assertions that people throw up all the time. They don't really know why they voted out, other than some sense of being British, as though being British was somehow incompatible with being in the European Union. Well, of course it isn't. French people don't feel any less French because they're in the European Union. German people don't feel Spanish because they're in the European Union. They're German, just as we're British. I just think people have been conned, and it's too embarrassing to admit it. So they never will, regardless of the consequences of what it is that they have wrought upon this great nation. Less great now, and significantly less great in the future than we would have been, thanks to them. This texter says, it seems like English people are very self-centred. I voted for Brexit, but if I had been told that Northern Ireland would be annexed into the EU without the consent of its people, I would never have voted for it. This texter says, did Stuart touch a nerve there, Nick? Again with the Stuart, the guy who was going on about his feelings. He feels so much better now we're out of the EU. It's some sort of indefinable emotional uplift. What absolute nonsense. I mean, that's just desperate. Anyway, did Stuart touch a nerve there, Nick? No? Other than my funny bone. You, sir, will never understand Brexit, he says. I assume it's a he. Just one of those things, I suppose. Sovereignty is the most important thing there is. We fought World War II for it, of course. Oh, my God. Will you people ever get over World War II? Turn off the History Channel. We won. Get over it. This texter says the EU are doing what they should be doing, protecting their member states. We left them. The Tory-supporting press were always going to blame the EU for our plummeting GDP, not this government. You have to wonder why the Tory-supporting press, the vast majority of the press in this country being right-wing, owned by billionaires who don't even live here. You have to wonder why they were so keen for us to get out of the European Union. Because as their proprietors don't actually live here, why would they be so keen? It's curious, ain't it? And I believe that they are so keen because, obviously, it's much easier to push around individual countries than it is to push around countries in a group. I mean, it's so obvious. Does it actually need stating? Divide and conquer. Slough. Hello, Paul.
Oh, hello there, Nick. Yeah, something that Gina Miller said on Christmas Eve on LBC, funny enough, it sort of made me sit up and take notice. She pointed out that because we left the EU, Boris would now be far more accountable to the British people because he couldn't hide behind the skirts of the EU.
Well, I think he'll have the ability to do just that for the considerable future, and then of course COVID into the mix will enable him to get away with anything.
Let's just allow the point to settle here. This is Gina Miller we're talking about, right? The arch Remainer, and she acknowledged basically that by leaving the EU, this country would become more democratic because the leaders of this country would no longer be able to hide behind the EU. They would actually have to face the people.
No, it's not. It is not that democratic. Not really. A minority of the people are now suffering what he himself called a stonking majority. He didn't even get half the people in this country to vote for him, and yet he's way more than half the MPs. What's democratic about that? What's democratic about our head of state being gifted that position by accident of birth? Did anybody vote for the Queen? Is anybody going to vote for her successor? No, not now, not ever, never. What's democratic about that? What's democratic about being overseen by an upper house, none of whom have been voted for? most of whom either got born into the position or got gifted their position because they gave some money to the government or the political party of the day, more accurately, or they just did their job and and kept their heads down for a while. I mean, do any of them act? It seems that the greater the title, the bigger the crook in this country in a lot of cases. And they're all sitting there in the best club in the world, utterly unelected, every single one of them. I mean, if you want to compare a level of democracy in the European Union and in this country, well, there's not even a comparison. I mean, but it's not even close. And yet so many people are still convinced that it's the other way around, that this is a more democratic country than is the EU as an institution, which the absolute opposite is the case. But I've been explaining this for years now, and it must have been 100 or more times I've said it, explain the precise makeup of the European Union, but people just don't listen. They put their fingers in their ears and they hum to themselves for fear of hearing something that doesn't chime with their already firmly held beliefs based on nothing.